She built her dissertation out of my words. I'll finish the verdict.
Nothing says academic achievement like watching your wife hand you divorce papers at her own PhD graduation party. The irony wasn't lost on me. After all, I'd written half her dissertation. Nathan, could you sign these? I need them filed Monday. Dr. Elise Mercer, freshly minted psychology PhD, thrust the manila envelope at me like a research proposal. Around us, her academic friends clutched wine glasses and pretended not to stare. I opened the envelope. Dissolution of marriage. Standard boilerplate, except for the part where she got everything and I got a generous helping of nothing. Here? Now? I asked, pen hovering over the signature line. Why wait? We both know this marriage has been intellectually bankrupt for years. She turned to her dissertation advisor, Dr. Julian Hughes, a silver-haired predator in a $1,000 suit. Julian was just saying how liberating it must be to shed dead weight. Julian's smile reminded me of a shark sizing up a wounded seal. Academic partnerships require compatible intellectual vigor. I signed the papers with a flourish that would have made John Hancock proud. There you go, Dr. Mercer. Consider your burden officially lifted. The small crowd of professors and graduate students watched with the hungry fascination of vultures at a train wreck buffet. Dr. Tanya Reeves, Elise's best friend and fellow psychology researcher, actually giggled. Oh, Nathan, Tanya said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. What will you do now? I mean, without Elise's academic connections? Probably learn to write my own papers, I replied, loud enough for the entire group to hear. Novel concept, I know. Elise's face flushed red. You're embarrassing yourself. Am I? Because I'm not the one who just served divorce papers at my own graduation party. I handed her the signed documents. But hey, congratulations on your doctorate. I'm sure you'll do great things with that degree. I caught myself. That you worked so hard for. Dr. Julian stepped closer, his cologne expensive and overwhelming. Nathan, perhaps it's time you moved on. This is a celebration of serious academic achievement. You're absolutely right, Julian. This is serious. I looked around the room at the assembled academics, their faces a mixture of embarrassment and anticipation. So serious that I should probably mention how much I contributed to that serious academic achievement. The room went dead silent. Elise's eyes widened with panic. Nathan, don't you dare. Relax, Dr. Mercer. Your secret's safe with me. After all, what's a little ghostwriting between former spouses? I grabbed my jacket from the back of a chair. Enjoy your party, everyone. And Elise, good luck defending your next paper all by yourself. I walked out of the faculty lounge, leaving behind 3 years of marriage and 7 years of writing someone else's academic career. The autumn air hit my face like a slap of reality. My phone buzzed with a text from Mark Davidson, my one real friend in this academic wasteland. Saw you leave, everything okay? I typed back. Just got divorced at a graduation party. New personal record. Jesus. Want to grab a beer? Rain check. I need to disappear for a while. And disappear I did. Within 2 weeks, I'd packed my life into a Honda Civic, driven 800 miles south, and started over in a small college town where nobody knew Dr. Elise Mercer or cared about her revolutionary research in cognitive behavioral therapy. I found work as a technical writer for a software company, rented a modest apartment near the university, and began the slow process of rebuilding my life without academic pretensions or manipulative spouses. For 3 years, I lived in blissful anonymity. I wrote user manuals, attended local trivia nights, and dated a librarian named Sarah who thought my academic background was interesting but not essential. Life was simple, honest, and refreshingly free of intellectual posturing. Then Elise found me. The pounding on my apartment door at 7 in the morning sounded like someone trying to break down a medieval castle gate. I stumbled out of bed, threw on yesterday's jeans, and peered through the peephole. Dr. Elise Mercer stood in my hallway, looking like she'd been sleeping in her car for a week. Her usually perfect blonde hair hung in greasy strands, her designer clothes were wrinkled and stained, and her eyes had the wild intensity of someone who'd been drinking coffee and plotting revenge in equal measure. I opened the door, but kept the security chain attached. Elise, what a delightful surprise. You bastard! She screamed loud enough to wake my neighbors. You absolute bastard! Look what you've done to me. Through the 3-inch gap, I could see she was holding a manila folder stuffed with papers. Her hands were shaking. I've done nothing to you, Elise. I've been 800 miles away, minding my own business. Liar! You sabotaged my career. You ruined everything. She threw the folder at the door. Papers scattered across the hallway floor. My house burned down. My position at the university is gone. My research grants were revoked. This is all your fault. I closed the door, undid the chain, and opened it fully. Elise looked worse up close. Dark circles under her eyes, a nervous twitch in her left cheek, and the unmistakable aroma of someone who had been living in her car. Elise, I haven't sabotaged anything. I don't even know where you work now. Don't play dumb with me, Nathan. Someone's been sending anonymous letters to my department, questioning the authenticity of my dissertation. Someone's been calling my research subjects, asking about inconsistencies in my data. Someone burned down my house. I bent down and gathered the scattered papers, insurance claims, police reports, termination letters from something called the Midwest Institute for Behavioral Research. The house fire report was particularly interesting. Electrical fault in the basement, total loss, insurance investigation pending. This is terrible, Elise. Really, but I had nothing to do with any of it. She grabbed my arm with surprising strength. Where were you 3 months ago? March 15th specifically? I pulled free from her grip. March 15th? I was in Dallas for a software conference. Company sent me for a week of training. Why? That's when my house burned down. Then you should be talking to the fire department, not me. I handed her the papers. Look, I'm sorry your life imploded, but I've been busy rebuilding my own. Maybe you should focus on that instead of driving around the country looking for someone to blame. Her face crumpled, and for a moment she looked like the woman I'd married 8 years ago. Vulnerable, uncertain, human. Then the mask snapped back into place. This isn't over, Nathan. I know you're behind this. I'm going to prove it. She stalked back to her car, a beat-up Honda with Michigan plates, and a trunk held closed with bungee cords. As she drove away, I noticed my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, peering through her blinds with the fascination of someone watching a particularly dramatic soap opera. I called in sick to work and spent the morning researching Elise's recent history. Social media made it embarrassingly easy. Her Facebook page told the story of a spectacular professional meltdown, cryptic posts about betrayal in academia, increasingly paranoid rants about saboteurs and enemies. And finally, 3 months ago, photos of a house fire with the caption, "They think they've won." Her LinkedIn profile was even more revealing. The Midwest Institute for Behavioral Research had terminated her position due to questions regarding research methodology and data integrity. 3 major psychology journals had retracted papers she'd published. Her professional reputation was in ruins. My phone rang. Mark Davidson's name appeared on the screen. Mark, please tell me you're calling with good news. Define good news. I just got a very interesting call from campus security. Apparently, your ex-wife showed up at the psychology department yesterday, demanding to see her old files. When they told her the files were sealed pending an ethics investigation, she started screaming about conspiracies and revenge plots. She thinks I'm sabotaging her career. Are you? Mark, I write software manuals for a living. I wouldn't know how to sabotage someone's academic career if I wanted to. That's what I told campus security, but Nathan, there's something else. Someone has been asking questions about Elise's dissertation. Anonymous calls to the department, emails to her old research subjects, formal complaints filed with the Academic Ethics Board. I felt a cold knot forming in my stomach. Someone's actually investigating her? More than investigating. Someone with intimate knowledge of her research methods and writing style has been systematically dismantling her entire body of work. Whoever's doing this knows exactly where the bodies are buried. The implication hit me like a sledgehammer. Mark, you don't think I think you wrote most of her dissertation and probably helped with her research papers. I think you know exactly which parts were plagiarized, which data was fudged, and which conclusions were completely fabricated. And I think someone with that knowledge could destroy her career without breaking a sweat. But it wasn't me. I believe you? But Nathan, if it wasn't you, then who? Who else would have that kind of detailed knowledge of her academic fraud? The answer came to me with crystal clarity. Julian. Dr. Julian Hughes, her dissertation advisor. Think about it, Mark. He supervised her work. He had access to all her files, all her research data. And 3 years ago, at her graduation party, He was practically undressing her with his eyes. You think they were having an affair? I think Julian was using Elise to advance his own career, and when their relationship went south, he decided to eliminate the evidence. What better way to cover up academic misconduct than to destroy the person who could implicate you? Mark was quiet for a long moment. That's a serious accusation, Nathan. It's also the only explanation that makes sense. Julian helped Elise cheat her way through graduate school, probably in exchange for personal favors. When their affair ended, he started systematically destroying her career to protect himself. And now she's blaming you. Now she's blaming me. I looked out my window at the quiet suburban street where I'd built my new life. Mark, I think I'm about to get dragged into something very ugly. What are you going to do? What any reasonable person would do. I'm going to prove Julian's guilt and clear my name. And how exactly do you plan to do that? I smiled for the first time in Edis. By giving Dr. Elise Mercer exactly what she deserves. A chance to defend her academic work in front of her peers, publicly. Mark drove up from the university 2 days later, his ancient Subaru loaded with files, laptops, and enough coffee to keep a small army awake for a week. He'd taken a personal day to help me plan what he was already calling the most elaborate academic revenge plot in modern history. Are you sure about this? He asked, spreading documents across my kitchen table. Because once we start this process, there's no going back. I studied the papers he'd brought, university regulations, academic ethics guidelines, procedures for challenging doctoral dissertations. Mark, she drove 800 miles to accuse me of burning down her house. I think we're already past the point of no return. Fair enough, but Nathan, what we're planning isn't just revenge, it's academic warfare. The plan was elegantly simple. According to university regulations, any doctoral dissertation could be challenged within 5 years of acceptance if new evidence emerged regarding plagiarism, data falsification, or other academic misconduct. The challenge process required a formal hearing before a committee of faculty members, with the degree holder required to defend their work under questioning. The beauty of it, Mark explained, is that Elise will have to defend research she didn't actually do and answer questions about methodology she doesn't understand. Without you there to feed her the answers, she'll collapse under scrutiny. And Julian will be required to attend as her former advisor. He'll have to publicly defend his supervision of her work, knowing that any serious investigation will expose his own involvement in the fraud. I poured another cup of coffee and studied the timeline we'd constructed. How long do we have to file the challenge? Her degree was awarded 3 years ago. We have 2 years left. Mark pulled out a thick folder labeled evidence. But Nathan, we need to be careful about how we present this. We can't just accuse her of fraud without proof. What kind of proof do we need? Mark opened the folder and spread out photocopied pages covered in red ink. I've been comparing Elise's published papers with known sources. Look at this. He showed me a side-by-side comparison of Elise's research methodology and a paper published 2 years earlier by a researcher at Stanford. The similarities were striking, not just in approach, but in specific word choices and statistical analysis. She plagiarized this? She plagiarized this in pieces of at least 6 different papers, then had you rewrite the sections to disguise the theft. But the underlying research design is identical to work that was already published. I studied the evidence with growing amazement. Mark, this is enough to get her degree revoked. It's enough to get her degree revoked and Julian fired for inadequate supervision. But we need more than just plagiarism. We need to prove that the data itself was fabricated. How do we do that? Mark smiled grimly. We make her defend her research methodology in front of people who actually understand statistics. Trust me, if Elise fabricated her data, a competent statistician will spot the problems in about 5 minutes. We spent the rest of the day crafting our formal challenge. The document was a masterpiece of academic bureaucracy. 30 pages of carefully worded accusations, supported by exhibits, cross-references, and citations. We accused Elise of plagiarism, data falsification, inadequate research methodology, and failure to properly cite sources. The hearing will be public, Mark explained as we finished the paperwork. University policy requires open proceedings for dissertation challenges. We can invite anyone we want, faculty, students, media. Media? Nathan, this is going to be the academic scandal of the decade. A psychology PhD whose entire body of work was ghostwritten by her husband supervised by an advisor who was probably sleeping with her, defended in front of a committee that will include her professional enemies. The Chronicle of Higher Education will love this story. I signed the challenge document with a flourish. When do we file it? Tomorrow morning. The university has 30 days to schedule the hearing once we submit the paperwork. And Elise? Elise gets official notification within 48 hours. She'll have 2 weeks to prepare her defense. I imagined Elise's reaction when she received the formal challenge to her doctoral degree. The panic, the rage, the desperate scrambling to understand research she'd never actually conducted. Mark, is this legal? Are we opening ourselves up to lawsuits? Everything we're doing is completely within university regulations. We're not making false accusations. We have documented evidence of plagiarism and research misconduct. We're following proper procedures for challenging academic fraud. He paused. Of course, Elise might try to sue us anyway. Let her try. I've got 3 years of distance between me and her academic career, plus documented proof that I was 800 miles away when her life started falling apart. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. I know what you're planning. Stop now or you'll regret it. I showed the message to Mark. Looks like word is getting out. That's not Elise's number. No, it's not. I studied the message more carefully. Mark, I think Julian knows we're coming for him. Good, let him sweat. We filed the challenge the next morning at the university registrar's office. The clerk, a middle-aged woman with the weary expression of someone who'd seen every possible form of academic drama, accepted our paperwork with professional indifference. Formal hearing will be scheduled within 30 days, she said, stamping our copies. All parties will be notified by certified mail. As we walked across campus toward Mark's car, I felt a strange mixture of anticipation and dread. We'd just initiated a process that would publicly destroy Elise's academic career and probably end Julian's tenure at the university. Any second thoughts? None whatsoever. Good, because I just saw Julian's car in the faculty parking lot. I think he's been watching us. I looked back toward the administration building. A black BMW was pulling out of the lot, its windows too tinted to see the driver clearly. Let him watch. Much, I said. In 2 weeks, he'll be answering questions under oath about his supervision of fraudulent research. I hope he's prepared for that conversation. Mark started his car and pulled into traffic. Nathan, there's something else you should know. I did some digging into Julian's background. This isn't the first time he's been associated with questionable research. What do you mean? 3 years ago, another one of his graduate students was investigated for data falsification. The case was quietly dropped when the student withdrew from the program and transferred to another university. You think Julian has a pattern of enabling academic fraud? I think Julian has a pattern of using graduate students for his own purposes, then discarding them when they become inconvenient. Mark turned onto the highway heading back to my town. The question is, what happened between Julian and Elise that made her inconvenient? I thought about the text message warning me to stop my investigation. I think we're about to find out. The certified letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a postal worker, who seemed personally offended by the early hour. I signed for the thick envelope with the university's official seal, knowing it contained Elise's formal response to our dissertation challenge. Her reply was 23 pages of legal bluster, academic jargon, and barely contained rage. She denied all accusations of plagiarism and data falsification, demanded the challenge be dismissed as malicious harassment by a disgruntled ex-spouse, and threatened to sue me for defamation, harassment, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The most interesting part was her defense strategy. Instead of addressing the specific evidence of plagiarism, she attacked my credibility and motives. According to her filing, I was a failed academic with a history of mental instability and substance misuse, who had systematically stalked and harassed her since our divorce. I called Mark immediately. Have you seen Elise's response? Just finished reading it. She's claiming you have a drinking problem and a history of domestic violence. Neither of which is true. I know that, and you know that. But the hearing committee doesn't know that. Nathan, she's trying to make this about your character instead of her research. Will it work? Not if we stick to the evidence. But it means the hearing is going to get ugly. She's going to attack you personally, try to make you look like a vindictive ex-husband with an axe to grind. I poured myself a cup of coffee and studied Elise's accusations more carefully. The document was professionally written, probably by a lawyer, But the underlying strategy was pure Elise. When caught in a lie, attack the accuser. Mark, there's something else. Look at page 15, the section about Julian's supervision. I could hear Mark flipping through pages. Got it. Dr. Hughes provided exemplary guidance throughout the research process and maintains complete confidence in the integrity of the defendant's work. Julian's backing her up. He's willing to testify in her defense. Of course he is. If Elise goes down, she'll take him with her. He has to support her story. Or, I said slowly, he's the one who wrote this response. Look at the writing style, the academic terminology, the legal arguments. This doesn't sound like Elise. Mark was quiet for a moment. You think Julian's helping her fight the challenge? I think Julian's orchestrating her entire defense. He knows exactly what evidence we have because he helped create the original fraud. Now he's trying to discredit us before we can expose him. That's a risky strategy. If we can prove Julian helped write her response, it'll look like they're coordinating their stories. I smiled grimly. Then we better make sure we can prove it. The hearing was scheduled for the following Friday at 2 p.m. in the university's largest conference room. According to the notification letter, the proceeding would be open to the public and recorded for the university archives. Mark had assembled our evidence into a presentation that would make a prosecutor proud. Side-by-side comparisons of plagiarized text, statistical analysis showing impossible data patterns, and a timeline documenting Elise's research that revealed numerous inconsistencies. The key, Mark explained during our final preparation meeting, is to stay focused on the academic issues. Don't let her drag you into personal attacks or emotional arguments. We have the evidence. We just need to present it clearly and let the committee reach their own conclusions. What about Julian? Julian will be there as her former advisor. He'll try to defend his supervision and support her version of events. But Nathan, if Julian helped fabricate her research, he's walking into a trap. The committee will ask him specific questions about methodology and data analysis. If he can't answer them convincingly, his credibility will be destroyed. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining different scenarios. Elise breaking down under questioning, Julian being exposed as a fraud, the committee voting to revoke her degree. But I also imagined worse possibilities. The committee believing her accusations about my character, the hearing backfiring, and making me look like a vindictive stalker. At 3 a.m, my phone rang, unknown number. Hello? Nathan, it's Julian. We need to talk. I sat up in bed, instantly alert. Dr. Hughes, working late. Meet me tomorrow morning before the hearing. There are things you don't understand about Elise, about what really happened. Such as the fact that she's been lying to you about everything? The house fire, the investigation into her research, even the reason for your divorce. Nathan, Elise is not the victim she's pretending to be. I grabbed a pen and notepad from my nightstand. I'm listening, not over the phone. Meet me at the campus coffee shop at noon. Come alone. Why would you want to help me? Julian's laugh was bitter, because Elise is about to destroy both of us, and I'd rather go down fighting than let her win. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, trying to process what I'd just heard. Julian wanted to meet before the hearing, claimed Elise had been lying about everything, and seemed to think she was manipulating both of us. I called Mark immediately. This is either a trap or Julian's about to flip on Elise, Mark said after I explained the conversation. Either way, you can't meet him alone. He specifically said to come alone. And I specifically think that's a terrible idea. Nathan, if Julian's working with Elise, this could be an attempt to get you to say something incriminating before the hearing, or worse, to make you look unstable by claiming you threatened him. But what if he's telling the truth? What if he has information that could help our case? Mark sighed. Then we record the conversation and hope he doesn't notice. The next morning, I drove to campus with a digital recorder in my jacket pocket and Mark following in his car at a distance. The coffee shop was crowded with students and faculty, providing plenty of witnesses, but also plenty of background noise. Julian was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee and the haunted expression of a man who hadn't slept in days. He looked older than I remembered, and his silver hair disheveled and his expensive suit wrinkled. Nathan, thank you for coming. He gestured to the empty chair across from him. We don't have much time. I sat down and activated the recorder in my pocket. Start talking. Elise has been playing us against each other from the beginning. The investigation into her research, the anonymous complaints, even the house fire. She orchestrated all of it. That's impossible. She's the victim. She's the perpetrator. Julian leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. Nathan, Elise burned down her own house for the insurance money. She filed complaints against her own research to create a narrative of persecution. She's been planning this for months. I stared at him in disbelief. Why would she do that? Because she knew her academic fraud would eventually be discovered. Instead of waiting to be exposed, she decided to control the narrative. Make herself look like the victim of a conspiracy, blame you for sabotaging her career, and use the insurance money to start over somewhere else. And you? Where do you fit into this conspiracy? Julian's face flushed with shame. I was her lover, Nathan. For 2 years, starting in her second year of graduate school. She seduced me, convinced me to help her with her research, made me believe we had a future together. You helped her cheat. I helped her refine her methodology and improve her writing. I didn't know she was plagiarizing sources or fabricating data until much later. When did you find out? 6 months ago. Another faculty member showed me the similarities between Elise's work and previously published research. When I confronted her, she laughed, said I was as guilty as she was, and if she went down, I'd go down with her. I felt pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. So you ended the affair. I tried to, but Elise doesn't accept rejection well. She threatened to accuse me of inappropriate conduct, claim I'd coerced her into the relationship in exchange for academic favors. And then her house burned down. 3 days after I told her our relationship was over, Julian pulled out his phone and showed me a text message. She sent me this the morning after the fire. The message was chilling. Now you know what happens to people who betray me. Nathan's next. I stared at the phone screen, my mind racing. She threatened me? She's obsessed with the idea that you're trying to destroy her career. In her mind, you're the mastermind behind a vast conspiracy to ruin her life. But I haven't done anything. I know that, and deep down she probably knows it too. But Elise can't accept responsibility for her own failures. She needs someone to blame, and you're the perfect target. I thought about the hearing scheduled for 2 hours from now, the evidence we'd prepared, and the trap we'd set for both Elise and Julian. Why are you telling me this now? Because this afternoon she's going to accuse you of stalking, harassment, and possibly arson. She has no evidence, but she's very convincing when she wants to be. I can't let an innocent man be destroyed by her lies. What do you want in return? Julian looked around the crowded coffee shop, then back at me. Help me expose her before she destroys us both. I'll testify about her research fraud, confirm that she plagiarized sources and fabricated data. In exchange, you help me prove she burned down her own house and has been orchestrating this entire persecution narrative. I considered his offer. Julian was admitting to academic misconduct and an inappropriate relationship with a graduate student. His career was already over, but his testimony could provide the final piece of evidence needed to destroy Elise's credibility completely. Deal, I said, extending my hand across the table. Julian shook it with visible relief. Nathan, there's one more thing you need to know. Elise isn't planning to defend her research this afternoon. What do you mean? She's planning to attack you. Publicly, viciously, and with complete disregard for the truth. She wants to make you look so unstable and vindictive that the committee dismisses your challenge without examining the evidence. I smiled grimly. Then she's in for a very unpleasant surprise. The hearing room was packed beyond capacity. Word had spread through the academic community that a major dissertation challenge was taking place, and faculty members from multiple departments had shown up to witness what promised to be a spectacular confrontation. I sat at a table facing the 5-member committee, with Mark beside me as my advisor, and Julian conspicuously absent from Elise's side of the room. The evidence we'd prepared was organized in neat stacks: plagiarism comparisons, statistical analyses, timeline discrepancies, and now Julian's written statement admitting to the academic fraud. Elise entered the room at exactly 2 o'clock, flanked by a lawyer and radiating the kind of cold confidence that had once made her seem intellectually formidable. She wore a conservative black suit and had pulled her hair back in a severe bun that made her look like a prosecutor preparing to destroy a hostile witness. Dr. Margaret Chen, the committee chair, called the hearing to order. We're here to examine allegations of academic misconduct in the doctoral dissertation of Dr. Elise Mercer, submitted by Nathan Mercer. Mr. Mercer, you may present your evidence. Mark and I had rehearsed this presentation dozens of times. We started with the plagiarism evidence, side-by-side comparisons of Elise's work and previously published sources, highlighting identical passages, methodological approaches, and statistical analyses. The defendant's dissertation contains substantial unattributed material from at least 6 published sources, Mark explained, projecting the comparisons onto a large screen. In some cases, entire paragraphs were copied verbatim with only minor word changes to disguise the theft. Elise's lawyer objected. These similarities could be coincidental or represent standard methodology in the field. Not when the statistical errors are identical, I replied, standing to address the committee. Dr. Mercer's dissertation contains the same computational mistakes found in the original sources, including incorrect degrees of freedom and impossible correlation coefficients. Dr. Chen examined our evidence with the careful attention of someone who understood research methodology. And Dr. Mercer, how do you explain these similarities? Elise rose from her chair with theatrical dignity. Dr. Chen, what you're seeing is the result of a systematic campaign of harassment and defamation by my ex-husband. Nathan Mercer has been stalking me for 3 years, sabotaging my career, and now attempting to destroy my academic reputation through fabricated evidence. The evidence isn't fabricated, Mark interjected. These are direct comparisons of published sources available in any academic database. The comparisons may be real, but the interpretation is malicious, Elise's lawyer argued. My client's ex-husband has a documented history of mental instability and substance misuse. His accusations are motivated by personal vendetta, not academic integrity. I felt the familiar surge of rage that Elise had always been able to provoke, but forced myself to remain calm. Chen, I'd like to submit additional evidence. I handed the committee Julian's written statement, along with copies of the text messages he'd shown me that morning. The committee members passed the documents among themselves, their expressions growing more serious as they read. This is a sworn statement from Dr. Julian Hughes, the defendant's dissertation advisor, I explained. He admits to an inappropriate relationship with Dr. Mercer and confirms that her research contained plagiarism material and fabricated data. Elise's face went white. She grabbed the statement from her lawyer and read it quickly, her hands shaking with rage. This is fabricated, she screamed, her composure finally cracking. Julian is lying to save himself. He's the one who helped me. She caught herself, but the damage was done. Helped you what, Dr. Mercer? Dr. Chen asked quietly. Elise's lawyer put a restraining hand on her arm, but she shook him off. Julian Hughes coerced me into a personal relationship in exchange for academic favors. He wrote portions of my dissertation, provided me with research data, and supervised my work inappropriately. If there are problems with my research, he's equally responsible. The room erupted in whispers. Dr. Chen called for order. Dr. Mercer, are you admitting that your dissertation contains work you did not personally complete? I'm admitting that my advisor provided guidance that may have exceeded normal supervisory boundaries. But the core research, the analysis, the conclusions, all of that was my own work. Mark stood up. Dr. Chen, we'd like to test that claim. How do you propose to do that? By asking Dr. Mercer to explain her statistical methodology. If she conducted the research herself, she should be able to answer basic questions about her data analysis. Elise's lawyer objected strenuously, but Dr. Chen overruled him. This is an academic hearing, counselor. The defendant's understanding of her own research is directly relevant to the allegations. Mark approached the projection screen and displayed one of Elise's data tables. Dr. Mercer, can you explain how you calculated the correlation coefficients in Table 3? Elise stared at the screen for a long moment. The correlations were calculated using standard statistical software. Which software? SPSS. And what specific procedure did you use? Another long pause. The standard correlation procedure? Can you be more specific? Did you use Pearson's R, Spearman's RHO, or another correlation measure? Elise looked desperately at her lawyer, then back at the screen. Pearson's R. And why did you choose Pearson's R over other correlation measures? Because it's the most commonly used correlation in psychological research. Mark smiled grimly. Dr. Mercer, the data in Table 3 is clearly non-parametric. Pearson's R would be inappropriate for this type of data. Any graduate student in psychology would know to use Spearman's R880 for ranked data. The committee members exchanged glances. Dr. Chen made notes on her legal pad. Furthermore, Mark continued, the correlation coefficient you reported is mathematically impossible given the sample size and data distribution. The correct correlation for this data would be approximately 23, not the 67 you reported. Elise was trapped, and she knew it. Her face flushed red, and I could see her calculating whether to continue the charade or admit defeat. Dr. Mercer, Dr. Chen said gently, would you like to revise your previous statements about conducting this research independently? Elise looked around the packed hearing room, at the faculty members watching her humiliation, at the students recording everything on their phones, at me sitting calmly with the evidence of her fraud spread across the table. I want to make a statement, she said suddenly. Her lawyer grabbed her arm. Elise, I strongly advise against— I want to make a statement, she repeated, shaking him off. Dr. Chen nodded. The committee will hear your statement. Elise walked to the front of the room, her hands clenched into fists. When she spoke, her voice was clear and strong, but filled with venom. Nathan Mercer destroyed my life. He wrote my coursework, helped with my research, and then abandoned me when I needed him most. Yes, I received help with my dissertation. Yes, some of the work wasn't entirely my own. But every graduate student gets help from advisors, spouses, and colleagues. The only difference is that my help came from someone who later decided to use it against me. She turned to face me directly. You want to destroy me because you're a failed academic who couldn't make it in the real world. You're bitter, vindictive, and pathetic. You've been stalking me for 3 years, sabotaging my career, and now you're trying to steal the one thing I've accomplished. The room was dead silent. Elise was destroying herself with every word, but she seemed unable to stop. You burned down my house, Nathan. You filed false complaints about my research. You turned Julian against me. You've systematically destroyed everything I worked for. And now you want to take away my degree too. Dr. Chen interrupted. Dr. Mercer, do you have evidence that Mr. Mercer was involved in the fire at your residence? I don't need evidence. I know it was him. That's not how academic hearings work, Dr. Mercer. We deal in facts, not accusations. Elise laughed bitterly. Facts? You want facts? Here's a fact. I earned that degree. Maybe I had help, maybe I made mistakes, but I put in the work and I deserve the recognition. Dr. Mercer, I said, standing up slowly, you didn't earn anything. You cheated, you lied, and you committed academic fraud. The only work you put in was manipulating the people around you. Shut up, she screamed. You don't get to judge me. You're nothing. You're a technical writer living in a crappy apartment, writing instruction manuals for software nobody cares about. That's true, I replied calmly, but at least my work is honest. Elise grabbed the nearest object, a coffee mug from the committee table, and hurled it at me. I ducked and the mug shattered against the wall behind me. Campus security moved quickly, restraining Elise as she struggled and screamed obscenities. Dr. Chen called for a recess while they removed her from the room. In the hallway outside, Mark put his hand on my shoulder. Nathan, I think we can safely say that went better than expected. I watched through the window as security escorted Elise to their vehicle, her lawyer trailing behind with a briefcase full of useless legal arguments. Mark, is it over? The hearing? Yes. The committee will deliberate, but there's no question they'll revoke her degree. And Julian? Julian will probably lose his tenure and face an ethics investigation. But he cooperated with us, so he might avoid criminal charges. I felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and emptiness. 3 years of anger and resentment had just been resolved in a single afternoon, but the victory felt hollow. What happens to Elise now? Mark shrugged. She'll probably face charges for insurance fraud related to the house fire. Her career in academia is finished. Beyond that, it's not our problem anymore. Dr. Chen emerged from the hearing room and approached us. Mr. Mercer, the committee has reached a preliminary decision. Based on the evidence presented and Dr. Mercer's admissions, we're recommending that her doctoral degree be revoked immediately. The university will also conduct a full investigation into Dr. Hughes' conduct as her advisor. Thank you, Dr. Chen. Mr. Mercer, I want to apologize on behalf of the university. Academic fraud damages the integrity of our entire institution. Your willingness to come forward helps protect the value of legitimate degrees. As we walked across campus toward the parking lot, I realized that my 3-year nightmare was finally over. Elise's degree would be revoked, Julian would face the consequences of his misconduct, and I could return to my quiet life writing software manuals. But as we reached Mark's car, I saw a familiar figure waiting by the driver's side door. Elise had somehow escaped from campus security. Elise stood beside Mark's car like a predator waiting for prey, her professional facade completely abandoned. Her hair hung loose around her shoulders, her suit jacket was torn, and her eyes had the wild intensity of someone who'd lost everything and had nothing left to lose. "Going somewhere, Nathan?" she asked, her voice eerily calm. Mark stepped protectively in front of me. "Elise, you need to leave. Campus security is looking for you. Campus security can get lost. I'm not finished with Nathan." I moved beside Mark, keeping the car between us and Elise. "It's over, Elise. Your degree is being revoked, Julian's career is finished, and you're probably facing criminal charges. There's nothing left to fight about." She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Nothing left? Nathan, you've destroyed my entire life. My career, my reputation, my home, everything I worked for is gone because of you. Everything you worked for was built on lies." "So what?" she screamed, her composure finally shattering completely. "Everyone lies in academia. Everyone cuts corners, plagiarizes sources, fudges data. The only difference is that I got caught." "The only difference is that you got greedy," I replied. "You couldn't be satisfied with a little help here and there. You had to cheat your way through your entire graduate program." Elise pulled something from her purse, a small canister that looked like pepper spray. "You know what, Nathan? You're right, I did cheat. I cheated on my coursework, I cheated on my research, I cheated on you with Julian, and I cheated the insurance company when I burned down my house." Mark grabbed my arm. "Nathan, we need to get out of here." "But you know what I didn't do?" Elise continued, advancing toward us. "I didn't give up. I didn't run away to some pathetic little town and spend 3 years writing instruction manuals. I fought for what I wanted. And look how that worked out for you." She raised the canister, and I realized it wasn't pepper spray, it was lighter fluid. "Elise, what are you doing?" "What I should have done 3 years ago." She began spraying the fluid on Mark's car, soaking the doors and windows. "If I can't have my life back, then nobody gets to walk away from this." Mark pulled out his phone to call emergency, but Elise saw him and sprayed lighter fluid in his direction. He jumped back, dropping the phone. "No police, no campus security, no more committees," she said, pulling a cigarette lighter from her pocket. "Just you, me, and the truth about what you really are." I held up my hands in a gesture of surrender. "Elise, think about what you're doing. You're talking about arson, assault, maybe worse. Is it destroying me really worth spending the rest of your life in prison?" "Prison?" She laughed again. "Nathan, I'm already in prison. You put me there when you decided to challenge my degree. You locked me in a cage of humiliation and failure, and now you want me to just accept it quietly? I want you to take responsibility for your actions. Like you took responsibility for abandoning me, like Julian took responsibility for using me, like everyone in that hearing room took responsibility for enjoying my destruction." She was right in a twisted way. The hearing had been a public execution, and everyone present had enjoyed watching her fall. But that didn't justify what she was planning now. "Elise, you're better than this." "No, Nathan, I'm exactly what you made me. I'm desperate, vindictive, and completely without options. You want to see what academic fraud really looks like? You want to see what happens when someone has nothing left to lose?" She flicked the lighter. The flame was small, but bright in the afternoon sunlight. Mark and I backed away from the car, which was now soaked with lighter fluid, and would ignite instantly if she dropped the lighter. "What do you want, Elise?" "I want you to admit that you're just as guilty as I am. I want you to confess that you helped me cheat, that you're complicit in every lie I told, every paper I plagiarized, every piece of data I fabricated. I won't do that. Then we'll all burn together." She moved the lighter towards the car, but before she could drop it, a voice called out from across the parking lot. "Dr. Mercer, step away from the vehicle!" Campus security had found us. 2 officers were approaching cautiously, their hands on their tools. Elise turned toward them, still holding the lighter. "Stay back. This is between me and my ex-husband. Ma'am, we need you to put down the lighter and step away from the car. I said stay back." In her agitation, Elise's hand wavered, and the lighter slipped from her fingers. It fell toward the puddle of lighter fluid at her feet. I moved without thinking, tackling her away from the car just as the lighter hit the ground. The fluid ignited in a whoosh of flame that singed my eyebrows and filled the air with acrid smoke. Elise and I rolled across the asphalt, her fists pounding against my back as I tried to pin her arms. She was stronger than I expected, fueled by rage and desperation, but campus security reached us quickly and pulled her away. "Let me go! Let me go! He destroyed my life!" They handcuffed her while she continued screaming accusations and threats. The fire department arrived to extinguish the burning lighter fluid, and paramedics checked Mark and me for injuries. "Nathan, are you okay?" Mark asked as a paramedic examined the minor burns on my hands. "I'm fine, just glad nobody got seriously hurt." Detective Sarah Morrison from the University Police took my statement while Elise was loaded into an ambulance for psychiatric evaluation. The detective was professional, but clearly disturbed by what she'd witnessed. "Mercer, this is the second incident involving your ex-wife in less than a week. Are you concerned about further retaliation?" "I think Elise just ended any possibility of further retaliation," I replied, watching the ambulance drive away. "She'll be facing charges for attempted arson, assault, and probably a psychiatric hold." "What about the dissertation challenge? Will you continue with the process?" I looked at Mark, who nodded. "The committee has already made their decision. Dr. Mercer's degree will be revoked regardless of what happens with these criminal charges." Detective Morrison closed her notebook. "Mr. Mercer, I'd recommend staying away from Dr. Mercer and avoiding any further contact. Based on her behavior today, she represents a genuine threat to your safety." "Detective, I think Dr. Mercer's threatening days are over." 3 weeks later, I received a letter from the university formally notifying me that Elise's doctoral degree had been revoked due to academic misconduct. Julian Hughes had resigned his position and was under investigation by the State Ethics Board. Elise herself was in a psychiatric facility, facing charges for attempted arson, assault, and insurance fraud. Mark called me the day the letter arrived. "How does it feel to be vindicated?" "Honestly, it feels like closing a book I should have finished reading 3 years ago." "Any regrets?" I thought about the question carefully. "I regret that it took so long to expose the truth. I regret that other people got hurt in the process, but I don't regret challenging her degree or holding her accountable for academic fraud." "And Elise?" "Elise made her choices. She chose to cheat, she chose to lie, and she chose to blame everyone else for the consequences. I'm not responsible for her decisions." Mark was quiet for a moment. "Nathan, there's something else. The university wants to offer you a position." "What kind of position?" "Academic Integrity Coordinator. They want someone with your experience to help prevent future cases of dissertation fraud." I laughed. "They want to hire me to catch other people's cheating spouses? They want to hire you to protect the integrity of their academic programs." "It's a real job, Nathan. Good salary, benefits, the chance to make a difference." I looked around my small apartment, at the software manuals stacked on my desk, at the quiet life I'd built away from academic politics and intellectual pretensions. "Mark, I appreciate the offer, but I think I'll stick with writing instruction manuals. At least in the software world, when something doesn't work, people admit it and fix the problem." "Fair enough. But Nathan, you should know that what you did took courage." "A lot of people would have just walked away and let the fraud continue." "Maybe, but I couldn't let her get away with stealing credit for work she didn't do. Academic degrees are supposed to mean something." After Mark hung up, I sat at my kitchen table and read the university's letter one more time. Dr. Elise Mercer's doctoral degree in psychology had been officially revoked due to plagiarism, data falsification, and academic misconduct. Her name would be removed from all university records, her dissertation would be withdrawn from the academic database, and any publications based on her fraudulent research would be retracted. It was a complete and total victory. Elise's academic career was destroyed, her reputation was in ruins, and she was facing years of legal consequences for her actions. So why didn't I feel better about it? Maybe because revenge, even justified revenge, doesn't actually fix anything. It doesn't restore the time I wasted helping her cheat, or erase the 3 years I spent running from the truth, or undo the damage her lies caused to everyone around her. But it does provide closure, and sometimes closure is enough. I folded the letter, put it in my desk drawer, and went back to writing instruction manuals for software that actually works the way it's supposed to.